3, 2, 1. We are live now.
Good morning, everyone. Greetings from the Ministry of Education Innovation Cell. In today's edition, we will have a session on storytelling as an effective communication tool for innovators and startup founders. We have with us Mr. Nishant Sharma as our today's speaker. Mr. Nishant Sharma is Institute Fellow at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. His broad area of research lies in nanoscience and nanotechnology. He is an alumnus of IIT Delhi, and he was an elected convener at IIT Delhi. At IISc, he is a vice president of Intel IISc, which is an entrepreneurship cell aimed at fostering the spirit of innovation through product development. In past, he has been associated with MacTech Solutions Private Limited as an industrial engineer. He's a storyteller and writes most of his work on LinkedIn. He has more than 10 million views of his content. Please join me giving a warm welcome to Mr. Nishant Sharma. Over to you, Nishantji. We all are very excited to hear you. And I will request all my viewers, students, faculty members, kindly share your questions in the chat box so that we can take it at the end of this talk. Thank you so much, Nishantji. Thank you so much. We can start.
Thank you, Abhishek, for a brief introduction. Indeed, I am honored to be invited for a talk in Yukti's Innovation Challenge program, which is organized by Ministry of Education's Innovation Cell, themed at storytelling as an effective communication tool for innovators and startup founders. Without delay, I will start my presentation. I will smear you all through very precise, concise, and simple slides. The main objective of the presentation is to give you a brief idea about the storytelling and its elements. And I will prevent myself getting too much into the details and depth of the storytelling, because the core idea here is to provide a brief and concise understanding of what storytelling is. If I get into the depth and, it will become a boring session, which I don't want to be. And in order to show the practical utility of the storytelling, I have added one slide in which I have discussed about a case study. So without delay, I would like to share my screen. So there is two screens in Microsoft PowerPoint. Share this. Visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible now.
Okay, so I don't have to introduce myself again, like Abhishek has done a good job indeed in that sense. And I'm also deeply honored, and thanks Abhishek for introducing me. So without delay, let me start. Okay, so I'll start with this image, this photo, as we already, many of us have seen it. It is none other than the great philosopher Plato. Indeed, he is one of the biggest philosopher of the world. And in his own words, he said that those who tell stories rule the world. And in fact, Plato was right, and Plato is right, not was, is still right, because in the days of the Plato, there was the kings having kingdoms. And in order to keep the people of their kingdom, united, they have to keep them engaged. And that can only be done through stories. And historically, we have seen that, the kings who has been ousted from their thrones were because they were not able to convince their public. Somebody else from the masses convinced the public, and they sat on the thrones. So the storytelling is historically and in present day and coming future days, it is so powerful that it has a larger impact, whether you are an innovator or you are in the startup ecosystem. So let's see what the storytelling is. So I will today discuss about the three elements of the storytelling. What storytelling is. I would be a bit academic here, like what, in a sense of trying to define what the storytelling is. However, the storytelling, the definition itself is subjective, and it varies from the ecosystem to ecosystem, like from academic ecosystem to the business ecosystem, right? Then I will discuss about why the storytelling is needed. So what is the need of storytelling? Then I will take you further where I'll discuss about how can we tell an effective story. I think Mr. Amit, I think your mic is on, if possible. Thank you. So these are the three core elements that I'll discuss today, and that's it. No big deal. Let's smear through the slides. Let's understand what is the storytelling, why the storytelling is important, and how can we become a very effective storyteller. So what is storytelling? It is a technique to reach and influence people with a message. I mean, let's take an example. If I wanted to teach or tell someone that honesty is good, that could be one message. The second message is like, you should not speak lie. However, to convince and comprehend people, especially children, it is very difficult if you give them the bare statements. So we have to frame the stories coupled with the consequences of not being honest, and at the same time telling them the fruitful result of being an honest. That is always more impactful than just giving a bare statement that honesty is good. So if you wanted to spread a message and influence people, you should always couple it with some story so that its impact, the impact increases many times. And in the subsequent slides, I will also discuss about, why the storytelling is more useful. I mean, it gives more impact than just the bare statements. So Ramayana. So I mean, in our childhood, India, that is the Bharata, which is being culturally rich, right? So we have heard the stories of Ramayana, Mahabharata from our parents, grandparents, and our grandparents had heard those messages from their grandparents. So storytelling is not something that has evolved in the present era or in few decades or centuries. Storytelling is something that is existing from the very existence of the humans, right? So at a time when the printing technologies were not so evolved like we had today, the idea of propagating a message was through storytelling. So one generation used to tell the story to the other generation, another generation used to carry that story to the another generation. However, there could be a change in the story, but the central message of the story remained the same. So storytelling consists in sharing stories through different media to disclose the narrative of a story. So what could those different medias be? So it could be word of mouth. So, I mean, as I mentioned that in the era when there was no printing technologies, I mean, there was printing technology, but that was not so advanced that is present in today's time. At that time, the people used to spread the message through stories. Sorry. Now the written form. If you see in the last few centuries, as the printing technology evolved, people started to propagate their ideas through continents, through countries, in the written form. So, for example, if you see, you get a newspaper, right? So word of mouth, if you compare the impact of word of mouth with the written, you will find that it will take a lot of time to disseminate the same information which can be disseminated with the help of the written media, for example, newspaper. something can be spreaded very fast. So the central message can be spreaded fast using the written. However, in the present era of technology where the digital media exists, the storytelling is not only limited to the word of mouth or in the form of written, it has also, inculcated the videos. For example, you see the YouTube short videos or some other videos which are filled with, they have used comics, they use some, what you say, the photos, the visuals, in order to give their central theme, message of the story. So a story describes what happened. A good story helps you see what happened. And a great story helps you feel what happened. So there is a difference. You see the difference between a story, a good story, a great story. I just wanted to add my own personal experience here, that I was reading a book, The Alchemist, right? And many of us who are present in this session is well aware about that book, which is written by Paulo Coelho. So I have read it numerous times. So every time when I read the book, I find myself, there is a character named Santiago in that. So I find myself to be the Santiago, and while I read the book, I find that I am taking that journey what the Santiago is. And that is what the great story is all about. So 4 C's of storytelling. I would be discussing about the 4 C's of storytelling. It's sort of an academic in nature. It's like 7 C's of communication, but it is essential here to, give these 4 C's of storytelling. The first one is the context. Context actually indicates when and where the story happened, right? The second comes to be the character. So characters are the people and the ones who are involved in the context. So these characters create a connection and emotion with the audience. Then is the cursor, sorry. Then comes the conflict. So within the context with characters, there is something that is called as conflict. That is, while you go through the story, you will find that it derives some action. Then comes a situation of tension or relaxation, and always a central suspense is kept till the last sentence is over. So, however, having these 3 elements, context, characters, and conflict, makes the storytelling incomplete without the 4th element, that is the creation. That is the narrative articulation. And it is indeed the most important ingredient of storytelling. Because if you see, there is a story which is told by 4 different people, a single story told by 4 different people, but we get convinced by only one out, or only few of them. And the reason is, it's because of the articulation. So even though you can have a powerful story, a story which has a very good context, bold characters, and having a very nice conflict within it. But if the narrative and articulation is not good, the way you present, the way you tell is not good, the entire, the idea of storytelling will be dissolved. So as Indranil Chakraborty has mentioned, that a story is a fact wrapped in context with emotion. How it is connected with the emotion, I think in subsequent slides, I will talk about the connection of the storytelling with the neuroscience. Yes, this is the slide, storytelling and neuroscience. So neurobiological findings on storytelling have shown that character-driven stories with emotional content are more persuasive and memorable, right? And it is evident So if you see from Ramayana and Mahabharata, the characters are the ones which are carrying the central message forward, and that is more persuasive and that is memorable as well. Moving to the next. So storytelling evokes strong neurological responses. How? So our brain has some types of hormones like cortisol, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. So which of these hormones play a role while we are telling the story to the people? Those people could be our customer, our employees, or could be a child. So our brain produces the stress hormone cortisol during the tense moments in a story, which helps the audience to focus. Oxytocin, it's a feel-good chemical. It's produced when we are trusted or shown kindness, and it motivates cooperation with others. A happy ending to a story triggers the limbic system, that is our brain's reward system, to release dopamine, which makes us feel more hopeful and optimistic. Character-driven stories cause increased oxytocin synthesis, which motivates people to engage in cooperative behavior. So the studies have shown that in order to motivate a desire to help others, a story must first sustain attention by developing tension during the narrative. So when in the previous slide, I talked about the articulation. So without the articulation, even you have, context, character, and conflict, without a proper articulation, everything sums to be zero. Moving to the next. The next core element of today's talk is why. So we have discussed about what is storytelling. The another element is like why to use storytelling. I mean, why is it essential to use the storytelling? Can't we just go with the bare statements? Can't we just say to someone that honesty is good? Is something good with the storytelling that people get more convinced? So, I mean, so if you see, storytelling makes facts and figures delivered with emotion, which are more convincing and memorable and thus more persuasive. So as a storyteller, what we want our audience, that could be our client, our employee, or anyone, that their experience should be memorable and we should be able to convince them. For example, if you are an entrepreneur and if you are going to pitch something for the venture capitalist, without a story, it becomes quite difficult, to convince them and ask funds from them. And even, I being a researcher, I can tell from my own experience that whenever you write a research paper or, when you wanted to deliver something in research context, you will always have to give a story which starts with some objective, right? The objective is like message, having some context, that's the body of the paper, the coupled with conflict, then experiments, and then proper articulation that frames it into a paper. Moving to the next. So millennials or Gen Y and Gen Z base their relationship with brands on emotional attachments with standout companies. People are more and more keen to have a sense of what they do. So storytellers can engage audience deeply with the right balance of emotions and key facts. So storytelling is an essential ingredient in creating the brands, because Gen Z is developing their relations on the basis of emotional attachments. So it is necessary in the present era to use stories to create the brands. So storytelling is deeply rooted in making an emotional connection with another person. So the neuroscientist Antonio Damasio have shown that emotions play a central role in decision making. I study at British Institute of Practitioners in Advertising, analyze the impact of 1,400 marketing campaigns on profit gains, and their results demonstrated that if you go by logic, they are 16% effective. So if you go, I mean, what the content he is talking about, that for the advertisement, if you just give the logic, those advertisements are 16% effective. If you go with emotion, they are 31% effective. And if you go with logic and emotion, they are 26% effective. So you can see a stark difference. When you go with emotion, it suppresses even logic plus emotion combo. So Stanford marketing professor Jennifer Aker have shown that stories are remembered up to 22 times more than facts and figures alone. So my idea of bare statements, with which I started my slide, right? Presentation. So the everything is in this statement, that the stories are remembered up to 22 times more than the facts or figures. As Abraham Lincoln has put it in a very beautiful quote, that to win a man to your cause, you must first reach his heart. So until unless you don't reach to someone's heart, it's very difficult to win them. And what I personally find winning is to convince them or to attract them for your brand, for your product. So why storytelling? Why storytelling can be used to shape vision, to pass on knowledge and wisdom, to shape identity and organizational culture. Stories can help internal and external audiences to understand the value of a product, right? So a clear narrative helps employees appreciate the vision of where the company is heading and empowers them to use their own creativity to get there. Corporate story and storytelling help leaders to communicate their vision to their community. A compelling story combines information and actions to stimulate emotion and energy. Why? I mean, the reasons are this. If I put in the nutshell, why is there a requirement of storytelling? So it comes to be that it captivates interest. It remains in the memory, as given in the previous slide, that the Stanford prof's research says that it is 22 times more effective than the bare facts, and it gets to the heart. And once you win someone's heart, it's easy for you to market your product or to seek your own, to seek the funds from venture capitalists. The third core element of the talk is how. How to tell the right story. So I have listed this into the 7 segments. Now, if you wanted to spark action, describe straight to the point how a successful change was implemented in a way that the audience imagine and how it might work for them. Now, if you wanted to tell who you are, so you have to tell who you are, what you have done, what's your thought process. And for framing that story, you have to inculcate the life events that reveal some of your strengths and weaknesses. Otherwise, the people would not be convinced until and unless they know you in the full about your strengths and weaknesses from your past actions. To transmit values, use characters, real or fictional. Like I was mentioning, that if I wanted to propagate the idea that the honesty is good, I have to use some characters. They could be real or fictional in order to tell the consequences and reward of being honest and the consequences of being dishonest. Now, if you wanted to foster collaboration, tell a story, how your collaboration experiences had been, and what are the plans you have for your collaborations in future. To communicate on brands, the story should relate to products, services, or companies and reflect the brand promise that is delivered and perceived. If you wanted to share the knowledge, you have to focus on mistakes made and show how they were corrected. So, when you wanted to share knowledge, your focus should be to tell the stories where you are able to convince people and make them understand how to ask the right questions. And once you are able to ask the right questions, how you can find the right solutions. If not the right solution, how can you, take a path to get the solutions which are right? And to lead into the future, if you wanted to tell a story where you wanted to lead somebody in, make them leaders, evoke the future in them by telling the stories from the past, by telling your own self experiences and how you have turned out from being from being not a leader to be a leader. Moving to the next. So, since this talk is focused on innovation and startup founders, I had added some bunch of slides related to business storytelling tips. So, as I mentioned that it is very effective for the brands to hit the emotion of the people, their employees, their VCs, in order to, get maximum output. So let's see, what are the business storytelling tips? Audience. This is the first thing that we should be focused while we are telling something related to business. We should know who is our audience, right? I'll come to the greater details in the subsequent slides individually to these points. So, for example, if I wanted to sell a refrigerator, I cannot go and sell that refrigerator into a country which is already, cold. So I can only, my idea of selling that refrigerator will come in a country where the temperatures are high. However, I can sell the heater in the cold countries. So we should be very specific who our audience is. Then the message. The message are stories carrying. In business, the message has to be very clear. It should be concise and straightforward. Authenticity. Be real. Don't try to fake. Because once the customer or anybody else knows the, non-authenticity that has been played by the leaders in order to create the brand or propagate a message, so that doesn't live for very long. So be authentic. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Keep it precise. I remember Albert Einstein, what he said that if you cannot simplify something, that means you have not well understood it. So keep simple as possible. Involve. So while you are telling the story, keep your audience involved into the story. So your audience, if they cannot participate in the middle of your story, they should feel that they are driving with your story. So let's specifically see what the audience is in business storytelling. So you must know your audience. What are your audience experiences and expertise? What are their thought process and concerns are? What are their needs and wants? If they want heater and you are supplying than the refrigerator. So that will not help. And what do they expect from you? I mean, not only in terms of product. So do they expect maintenance? Do they expect, discount? And do they expect customer service at a phone call? So you really have to understand the audience, your customer from in and out, and what would resonate well with them. Thus, to tell the right story in the business, it is essential to know what the audience values and what the audience is likely to be interested in order to create empathy and craft in a relatable story. Then message. This is the important one, that the message that will be conveyed should serve the objective of your storytelling, and it should directly hit and generate emotion and empathy within your customer or employee. So you should define the idea you want to communicate according to your intent, the action you want the audience to take, the feeling you want them to have, the opinion you want them to modify upon. So the way you will communicate your message should be related to the audience on a human level. So don't try to make stories at superficial levels, because now you are dealing directly with the customers. Here your trust is at stake, right? So don't just share information, tell story. So people will forget what you said and did, but they will remember how you made them feel. So, I mean, people will forget your words, people will forget what you was trying to sell, but people will always remember that you have cheated them, you have given them a wrong message. So refrain yourself from crafting a story which is non-authentic and which makes someone, whether it could be customer or employee, to feel embarrassed, because that is what they will carry forward for the rest of their life, and that could hit the brand value. Authenticity. Oscar Wilde has put it in a very beautiful way, that be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Don't try to fake. Don't try to become someone else, because you can't be. So ideally, storytelling should not be fictional, because a genuine narrative is more likely to connect with the audience. In particular, I mean, this is something which is in particular to the business storytelling. But when it comes to, writing fictional stories, there the message, dominate. So your message should be so strong that even if you write something fictional, it should make your story to connect with the audience. If the audience can relate to a real life story, you are really making a connection and building a trust in them. So storytelling is an effective way to communicate if you actually mean what you are saying. So if you are able to convince the other person on the side of the table of what you wanted to say and what you want from them, or what you want them to get accept, then the storytelling is the best way. And then the storytelling is doing its work. So be you, just you. Don't pretend to be anyone else. If your stories are honest and transparent, you can win over your audience. Sorry. Simple. As I mentioned, that Einstein mentioned that Albert Einstein mentioned that if you cannot simplify things, that means you have not well understood it. So keep it simple, stupid. This is a principle which is being used, which originated from the US Navy, that you should keep everything simple. So, I mean, the message should be clear, It should be precise and concise without focusing on details. Simplicity is a challenge when subjects are complex. Remember this. I'm repeating this line. Simplicity is a challenge when subjects are complex. And if you are able to simplify the things when subjects are complex, you have done literally a great job, not only in storytelling, but in a way to effectively propagate the idea that the subjects which were complex can be turned into simple things. So simple things have higher effectiveness over people. Visual storytelling. You can use animated images, videos that allows complex data to be broken down into smaller digestible pieces and chunks of memorable information. So if I ask you how to eat an elephant, right? More likely, some of us would think, how would we eat an elephant? But if you ask me, I'll eat an elephant by bit. So if you have complex information, you can, narrow down that information, break down that information into the smaller pieces and put it in a way that is meaningful, simple, concise, and that will leave more impact and would be effective on your audience, right? So visual benefits. So visuals drive emotions. Emotions drive decisions, and decisions led to action. So, this is the benefit of having visuals while you are telling your story. And the fifth most core element I feel is like involve. So you should ask a question to yourself for whom you are, for whom you are making these stories. These stories are for the audience. Your audience could be your client, customer, employee. So without their involvement, you would not be able to hit their emotions. You would not be able to get the empathy within them, right? So stories must be built and delivered so that the audience can feel involved as being a character of the story. So we cannot tell the story if we don't feel that there is someone listening to us and paying attention. So, imagine a situation where two people are sitting, only one speaking, another is just listening. And after some time, you will end up not having a discussion because you got an intention. You got to know that the other person is just listening and not responding. So we should know the ways in order to involve our audience. Because storytelling is about connecting. It is about connecting the people, the emotion through the statements. And those statements put line by line, ends up making a good story. So you need to vulnerable and connect to the vulnerability of others. We can't really listen to a story when the storyteller is not aware of his or her audience and is instead caught up in his or own speech bubble. So make people or your audience involved in while you are telling stories, because people like to be part of the stories. So how you can get your audience involved in the presentation? I'll give you the 3 simple strategies. Ask questions. I remember one of my friend, Snehil Saxena, like he's presently in the Canada. He told me that while you are talking to someone, the best way to engage them is to ask questions. Although you know the answer, but for their involvement, you can keep asking them questions, their opinion, right? You can brainstorm with them. You can ask them to sit and challenge them, right? You can challenge them for a particular piece of information or for something. And while challenging them, don't be unilateral, so that you challenge them and you step out. While you challenge them, you both should engage in order to solve the problem which is challenging. So a good storyteller makes the target audience part of the story he tells. So as I mentioned that, Apple. So as I mentioned that I would be talking about one case study in the and I am adding one slide here. And we all know Apple as a company is, I think, at the present also, it's the most valuable company in the world. And if not most valuable, it is one of the most valuable, at least top three companies, one of the top three companies. And the Steve Jobs, the co-founder of the Apple, he was pioneer in storytelling. So, I mean, the marketing strategy of Apple entirely lies in storytelling. So if you see the timeline in 2007, when Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone, he began his presentation by building a suspense. He told the people that they have developed the device, the product that they are going to show today is an iPod, a phone, an internet communicator. So the people thought like these are the three different things. But even as the audience is starting to catch on, he lingers in the suspense a bit long before, revealing that all these three things are in one, that is mobile phone, and that would change the world forever. And it is evident that the integration of all three of these things, how it has taken a toll in technology, that everything is available at our fingertip. So Jobs was building the iPhone brand even before the audience had seen it. The stories was consistent with the brand Apple he had already built. So he always knew that he is going to build something exceptional. And Apple today also uses the tradition of storytelling. And inspired by Apple, there are a bunch of companies which uses storytelling in order to propagate their product. So storytelling do a great job, when you wanted to foster the spirit of trustworthiness, brand value within your customer. And it can be seen till present, like the Apple has that highest brand value in the world. So they also show how their products help people create their own stories. Now, if you see the Apple, the camera. So if you see on the Apple's YouTube pages, Twitter pages, or different digital pages, they post the pics which are taken by the people. I mean, those pics are they took the consent of the people before posting, but they have involved their own people by taking their pictures, putting on the the social media platform of Apple. So it is helping the people to create their own stories, and the Apple is doing a great job in highlighting those stories. So what we can learn from Apple: hook the audience first, introduce your product second. So in order to hook your audience, you should understand their need, and for that you have to engage them before even the launch of a product. So I mean, in one of the videos, the Steve Jobs said that it's not that you bring a product and then you give it to the customer to have the experience. It is the reverse way. You first have the customer experiences, and what he meant is what the customer wants from you, and then develop the product, right? And then build suspense. So while you are telling the story, You should keep that suspense of what is going to be and focus your story on customers successfully using your product. So the question is, was Steve a natural storyteller? I mean, frankly speaking, I myself have searched when I saw the 2007 iPhone launch and the subsequent launches that the Apple made. I was also struck by the same question, that how can somebody be such a good storyteller? And the answer to this is that he was not a natural storyteller. He actually practiced a lot of times before going to this stage. So it is the practice, it is, experience that will refine the storytelling. And it is a continuous process. And I think the people are the students of storytelling till whole of their life. So it's not something a day or 2 day thing that you can learn. It could take years and years. So in nutshell, what are the learnings that we have got from today's talk? I have put it in this slides. So storytelling can help companies connect with their audience and build a long-lasting relationship of loyalty with their customers and increase employee motivation. So storytelling can be used as an emotional tool to create purpose and drive action from the audience. A well-constructed storytelling will inspire, engage, and motivate your team. So it is like internal and external. As an organization, when you want to influence your customer, that is considering them as the external, right? So you can use it as an emotional tool to create purpose. Whereas in internal, you can inspire and engage and motivate your team. Through imagination, stories help customers visualize context of a company, and it challenges and comprehend its strategy. Many companies use the storytelling to share their values, aspirations, and create a lasting bond with the target audience. So, in order to craft an impactful story, an analysis of the target audience is must. To understand their concerns, perceptions, the personalities, especially in a country like India, where the diversity is so huge that in order to launch a product, you have to be very specific region wise to understand the priorities and perception of the people of those particular regions or zones in order to propagate before propagating your product. And the last but not the least, that a greatly crafted story is not sufficient to move an audience. You can have a very great crafted story, as I mentioned, that one of the element in the 4 C's of storytelling, one of the element was articulation. How you are articulate the delivery through a plotted speech is necessary to actually achieve a behavioral change. So stories evoke emotion and they inspire action. So that's all from my side on this topic, and I am open for questions from the side of the audience. And this is my LinkedIn space where I write the stories, and you can always contact me through my Gmail, and you can follow me on Twitter as well. And at the same time, you can come and read the stories at my LinkedIn blogs. So, Abhishek, I am done with the slides. I'm open for questions. Audience, are there any questions?
Good morning, sir. Abhishek sir has went to hospital for some personal reasons, so I'm taking the in charge.
Okay, no issues.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing such a great knowledge, your experience with us, because we all know effective communication is an important tool for sharing, starting any startup and innovation. as you have told earlier, we are going to take some questions if we have any.
Yes. Yes, please.
Dear innovators and startup members, please post your queries if you have any. Okay, sir. I guess there is no queries. Very beautifully, you have explained each and everything. I thoroughly enjoyed all your speaking knowledge, sharing knowledge, and I hope the innovators and startup founders has also enjoyed this session. So, from this again, I am thanking you for sparing your time for this session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Monica, and
Yes.
thank you, the team of Ministry of Education's Innovation Cell, for inviting me for this talk. Thank you once again.
Sir, just a minute. We have one query from Miss Pooja. She is asking for
Sir, there is a
how
query
to
to practice.
practice storytelling. Is there any technique?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. That, I mean, how to become expertise in storytelling, right?
Yes,
So,
sir.
As such, there is no technique for storytelling. So if I wanted to ask you one thing, like, if you don't know how to swim, what is the best way to swim? Is to go and jump into the swimming pool, right? So the idea here is that you should, so there are two things. You can find a trainer and get trained for the swimming, right? But I mean, I personally say don't jump in the swimming pool. So you should start with creating some stories, make some rough draft, and you find a mentor, show that draft to them, and ask their help in evaluating your draft. So
Startup.
they will.
Yeah.
So is there any questions like?
Sir, one more question from Navya Agarwal. There is one: how to make a story convincing?
Yeah, I'll answer that question also, but let me complete that one. So once you are done with the draft, you can go to an expert and you can always tailor it down to the better things, right? So I remember, if you see this book, uh, this famous book, I just forgot the name, right? Okay, there is there is a book, I remember, I just forgot its name. So it got published after this around 82, 84 drafts, right? So even for a book, even for the best authors, the expert opinion matters. They also seek the opinion of the expert. So whatever you are reading, whatever the stories you have, those are not tailored in a day or two. So you need to sit with the people and brainstorm, right, to make the stories effective. And yes, in order to tell the stories, right, in front of the audience, you have to practice. There is no other way, other than practicing the story, right? You have to come out and, tell the story. So the another question is Pooja Nalawat, how to practice storytelling. No, she has already. Huh. How to make a story convincing? Naina had asked this question. So when I say that you wanted to convince someone else, for example, if you wanted to convince me for something through your story, first you have to understand my needs, right? You have to understand my priorities. So as I mentioned that if you come to sell me a heater in a country which is already like a country where the temperature is hot, right? Or in the month of June, July, if you go in North India and if you wanted to sell a heater, nobody's going to buy it. So you need to understand the necessity of your customer or your audience, right? In order to convince them. And you have to brainstorm, like if you wanted to play with their emotions, not, I will not use the word play, but if you wanted to hit the emotion, you have to connect them. You have to engage them into your story so that while they are with you in the story, they feel like that they are also driving the same car in which you are. So that will make them, I mean, that will convince them. There is a question so there is a question by Dr. Manpreet Singh. I experimented storytelling through Nukkad Natak with the programming language C. Components for the project structure and asked students to act like components of the project. Great. I mean, I think he's trying to say that he has an expertise in language C, but I think the thing that he has posted here is not relevant to the stuff. Maybe he needs to show his expertise somewhere else. This session is not about language C. Thank you, Dr. Manpreet.
I have to conduct.
Okay. Is there any more question, Monica?
No, sir. There is one more question from Prakash Almeida. The difference between storytelling and narratives.
I mean, I would put it in. I will restructure your question. That what's the difference between storytelling and the information sharing, right? So, I mean, I might be having an information. For example, let's suppose for subsequent 3 months, I had a dip in my profit in company. So the information is that there is a dip in the profit. Now, if I wanted to go and tell this to my employees, they would be discouraged, right? So I have to frame a story. I have to bring in the elements, what had led to this, decline in the growth for past 3 months. So that is a subtle difference between the information sharing and the storytelling.
I guess there is no more questions for today's session. Okay, thank you so much, sir. They are all innovators and startup. With this, we are concluding our today's session. Again, I am thanking Nishant sir for sparing his time and giving us such a valuable input regarding the storytelling. Sir, we are very much delighted to have you here today. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Monica. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Nishant ji.
Thank you, Amit ji.
Okay, welcome.